had responded to this saying a 100% cost share extension for 180 days is unprecedented. Instead, I'm focusing on other ways I can make a tangible difference in helping the citizens recover. But you had signed a letter back in March, right? Saying that you were requesting along with Governor Stein. So why the reversal in your position?
Oh, there's no reversal at all. My intent was to also advocate for a 180-day extension at 100% reimbursable rate for public assistance. That was a Hail Mary. I knew that at the time. I wasn't surprised at all that offer was denied. But let's look at actually where we are. North Carolina was granted, while FEMA's reimbursement rate for public assistance is typically 75% with a 25% cost share. North Carolina, because of the severity of the storm, was granted by FEMA. I went to Washington, D.C. and got a 100% cost share for 180 days.
But that's just for the debris removal and emergency recovery efforts. That's what I had read.
That's for all public assistance requests. The cost share is still now 90%. That's 15% above the typical FEMA reimbursement rate. That's the thing that most people don't recognize. I was successful. The rest of the North Carolina delegation was successful in going to FEMA early on last year and asking for 90% reimbursement once the 100% reimbursement time frame had expired.
Obviously, you know, there's so many numbers, there's so many percentages, it's overwhelming for anyone, even myself, who's been studying it. But in the letter, Congressman, it does say, let's go back to the 100% ask. This extension is in alignment with executive actions from previous storms, including Hurricane Katrina. So this was not, according to the letter that you signed on March 20th, this was not an unprecedented ask to keep those two categories, debris removal and emergency protective measures, at 100%.
Kim, that was a Hail Mary. We knew at the time we signed that letter.
Why would it be a Hail Mary if you're pointing out in the letter that other storms have had a similar ratio, a reimbursement of 100%?
But not for an extended 180-day mark. What you're not reading into this is the fact that FEMA, the federal government, has already reimbursed North Carolina $945 million. Excuse me, billion dollars.
Mm-hmm.
$945 million under this program. And we still maintain our 90% rate as opposed to 75%, which is the typical FEMA reimbursement rate. And so while that was a Hail Mary, North Carolina is still in much, much better shape than we would have had our delegation not gone to FEMA early on and sought the 90% reimbursement.
Can you talk with the viewers a little bit more in specifics, Congressman? This 100% recovery cost in Western North Carolina that you were asking for, that you tweeted about, what would that have covered as opposed to 100% reimbursement? Now we're at 90%. What specifically? It
would have been all of the things that our local governments are asking for public assistance, rebuilding water and sewer, infrastructure, removing debris, those types of things, and picking up after the hurricane. But again, keep in mind that we're 15% ahead of the typical storm because FEMA's normal rate is at 75%.
Does this now mean that the state of North Carolina will have to absorb it? Because as I understand it, cities and counties are held quote unquote harmless. They won't be on the tab for this, on the hook. So what happens at the state level now with this rejection of the ask by Governor Stein?
You'll have to ask Governor Stein what he intends to do at the state level. At the federal level, I continue to advocate in Washington, D.C. to help North Carolina accelerate our recovery. In fact, I just met with senior White House officials last week and revealed my 101-page report. The president appointed me to a special task force to offer recommendations on accelerating the recovery in North Carolina. For the last 10 weeks, I've been building that report. I'm going to release that. I'll give you the first copy of that. That's being released publicly. I'll put that out on the website this afternoon. In that is about 30 recommendations to the White House on things that we can still do that would even more than mitigate the difference in the 10% that folks seem to be having so much angst about.
I have been hearing from counties, municipalities, that they have only gotten loan money, that they haven't received federal funding. You're aware of this? What do you want to say about that?
Well, that's one of the recommendations. That's one of my asks with the White House last week, and I was assured that senior White House officials would be meeting with the folks at FEMA and at HUD to accelerate those payments. In fact, I met with the new director of FEMA 3 weeks ago, and he assured me that the approval process had already taken place and that checks were going out the door at that time. I would not be surprised at all today if we polled those local governments to find out that many of them have already received the checks that they've been so desperately waiting on.
Where do you see, without referring to this, what's your biggest takeaway? All the documentation, the percentages, the numbers, they're overwhelming. But since you're deep into this, where are the biggest problems, and where are people continuing to suffer that you think we're at a level 10 to get a response from the federal government?
Oh, the biggest problem clearly is the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C.
But I'm saying more, where is the money not going, in your opinion? Where do we need that money now that is not there?
Oh, we need that money now in the hands of our farmers. We need that money now to reimburse the local governments that have already expended their cash balances to rebuild. We need that money now to put together mitigation efforts to help us handle the next storm, and all that money now is well on its way, largely due to my meeting with senior White House officials just last week.
Somebody I just talked to about this 10%, because obviously it's been making some headlines, is saying that the criticism in some counties is that the federal government is changing the response plan, which has been to extend debris removal, 100%, and the emergency recovery, that's been normal. And now it's changing and putting it back to the states as a responsibility. What would be your response to that in the middle of our recovery across the state?
Oh, it's not changing anything at all. Everyone in the state, everyone in the federal government knew that North Carolina had a special exemption for 180 days where that cost share, instead of 75%, went to 100% for the 180-day period. Now it's dropping back to the 90% reimbursement, which is still well above the typical FEMA reimbursement rate.
Do you have, Congressman, in your office someone that is keeping a close eye on the specific amount of dollars that are passing through and reimbursements, et cetera? Because I know Charles Perez, my colleague, had asked you about that. Can we see that document or documents that you have in your office as far as tracking the money?
Yeah, I certainly have several people. That's why I'm able to tell you this morning that I know the number. I checked with my office this morning that has gone out under this public assistance program is $945 million.
Billion?
Million, $246,000. Almost $1 billion has gone out so far. But yeah, I'm tracking every conceivable component of the money coming out of Washington into North Carolina.
Can we get some copies of those documents from your
If you've got a
office?
specific question,
Well,
I'll
I
be
think
happy
I'd like to
answer
see
that.
whatever your office has as far as following the money of what's been reimbursed, what cities have asked for, what counties have asked, what have submitted, because there, even though I know you say that you're confident that some of these counties and municipalities have received their checks from the federal government, I suspect there's still a number of them out there that haven't. So I just would, if you have that, we would love to see that.
Yeah, I'll pull some summary information and give to you. You don't want to see the in-depth spreadsheets that we have to sort through to make those analysis. But yeah, I'll be happy to provide you.
Oh, we'd love to get the documents if we could.
Yeah.
Rather than just a summary.
I'll give you exactly what we get from FEMA.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about tariffs. Obviously, a lot going on. The bond market concerns. What do you stand with the president on where things are?
Well, the president asked to be the president of the United States on many platforms, one of which was to implement tariffs against those foreign nations that are harboring unfair trade practices with America. I certainly support the theory that we need to stand up as an economic superpower in America and bring foreign nations to the table to negotiate far better trade deals than what the United States has today.
Do you have any stand on what we're seeing in the stock market, what we're seeing in the bond yields, the concern that by what's going on, we've got now an exemption for China on iPhones and other electronics, where it's putting a hammer down and then retreating. The back and forth by the president on exactly what the tariffs will be, a retraction of the 90 days, putting it on hold. It's a lot of confusion and chaos and by critics.
I believe the American people largely stand behind President Trump.
Where do you stand?
And I stand behind President Trump. I believe that we owe it to the American economy. We owe it to America being an economic superpower to bring folks to the table and negotiate much better trade deals than what we've seen over the last several decades. Yeah, there seems to be some back and forth. I applaud the president for being flexible in being able to listen to American manufacturers and being able to listen to the American people and make adjustments where necessary. Many of the actions that are taking place right now are purely exploratory. We're in a place right now we have never been before with losing our economy to nations overseas, and I believe it's a prudent measure to show America's strength and to work to bring foreigners to the table to negotiate much better trade deals.
What's one point that you would want to bring out beyond the ones you mentioned in your report on your recommendations? Another big one that's close to your heart?
I was really pleased that the White House was open to my suggestions, that they invited me to the White House to go through this report in a great deal of detail. It was an extremely productive meeting. In this report, I asked for things like a provision for FEMA to reimburse folks for private roads and bridges, something that typically has not happened. A lot of our local governments are a little bit skeptical with some of the information they've been hearing from FEMA because some of the directives have been conflicting, and so I asked for a hold harmless provision. I asked for the administration to support 3 bills that I have put forth to help North Carolina rebuild. There's several provisions in here, about 30 different provisions that my team has taken feedback from local governments and our constituents and put a great deal of research into those and given some really good, solid recommendations to the White House.
Do you feel that FEMA should be eliminated? Obviously, there have been leaders that have said so they feel, including the president. What's your stand on that?
I believe FEMA should be significantly reduced. There are a number of provisions in this report that offer suggestions for improving
Such
FEMA.
as?
For example, leaving FEMA out of the process for debris removal. That's just one more level of bureaucracy.
Well, they actually got started sooner in Buncombe County than they did in Henderson County, your home county. They were slower to get going on it, and they used the federal government here, used the U.S. Army Corps in Buncombe, and they were ahead of the game in Henderson. So what would you say to that?
I would say that the implementation has been very inconsistent, and FEMA being in the middle of that just adds another point of bureaucracy. They should not have to be involved. That should be, debris removal should be between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the local governments. Involving a third entity just drags the process down. It makes it much slower and makes it much more confusing.
Could you tell us who you've met with in the White House with regarding review of this? I know you had the meeting, you had been on the plane with President Trump and talked about it when you came down here.
Yeah, I'd have to look the names up, but it was top officials from the Office of Management and Budgeting, the National Security Council, and the chairman of the task force.
With regard to your press conference last week that you had scheduled, why did you cancel specifically? Could you be candid about that? Were you aware that this letter of rejection was coming?
No, I wasn't aware at that time. Yeah, I'll be perfectly candid. I was very candid about that up front. The White House asked me for some more time to look over to the report that I was submitting, and they wanted a chance to meet with me personally, and they honored that commitment. I met with senior White House officials, and now today I'm happy to say that it was a very productive meeting, and I'm making the report public today.
A colleague of mine wrote that HUD does not have a plan from North Carolina, and there's been a delay on getting money from HUD. Are you familiar with this rub at all, that this back and forth that the federal government is saying that the rebuilding plan from North Carolina has not been submitted, and that is causing delays in getting federal dollars into the state?
Governor Stein told me he had submitted that plan to HUD, and so I would refer you back to him.
Okay.
I feel quite confident that he would not mislead me in something that's significant, but he told me last week he had submitted his plan to HUD, and now it's up to them to review the